If you
Yeah.
want to live to be 100, or maybe just live a long and healthy life and a good quality of life, then you need to be here today for sure. We are talking about longevity, and we are talking about some interesting panel discussions that I uh, uh, observed last week at the Women's Vegan Summit in Hollywood in on the West Coast. Woohoo! So we're all about longevity today, and it's one thing to live a long life, but we want to live, it's not about our age span, it's more about our health span. And we want to live a good quality life, and not spend the last 10 to 20 years of our life with illness and disease. So this is really what we're talking about, is longevity. All right. So last week on Friday was the Vegan Women's Summit in Hollywood at the Pacific Design Center, and there was a panel of three doctors and the chief executive officer of the Blue Zones kitchen. And so I wanted to share with you their thoughts on longevity. So the panel was called The Quest for Longevity. And there were three doctors: Dr. Melissa Sunderman, who is a board certified internal medicine and lifestyle medicine physician. We also had Dr. Janelle Gordon, who is also a board certified physician. She does family, obesity, and lifestyle med, as well as she is a certified culinary coach. And there was Dr. Robin Tiger, who is also a medical doctor and a licensed certified a lifestyle medicine doctor. But her thing is she is the stress free MD. So she focuses on being stress free. And then Abigail Coleman is the chief, I think she's a chief executive officer from the Blue Zone Kitchen. And so they provided their thoughts on longevity. And we will spend a couple of days probably going through some of the wisdom that they shared at the panel discussion. All right. And so here is a picture I took of the four women, plus there's the panel host is in the red. Now, the three doctors, who, it's interesting, they're kind of split. I don't know why, but the three doctors are on the right side. And then you have your panel host, and Abigail is on the other side. So it's interesting that they're kind of split that way. But the three doctors actually also were presenting and part of a panel last year that I was able to see. And so I'm going to tell you one interesting thing about the panel is they are all medical doctors. They learned kind of the traditional medicine. They're different ages. And what they found is all of them actually were kind of caught on to the plant-based lifestyle by patients of theirs who said, they were not willing to accept just taking medicine and different pharmaceutical drugs. They were looking to make some lifestyle changes. And when they saw how the benefits and the recovery that their patients were having, they were like, hey, there must be something to this. And they started looking into it. And again, they're all three different ages. And one of the three is actually just became a doctor in 2018, graduated in 2018 which really isn't that long ago. That's 6 years ago. And what they all said is that when they were going through their training, they did not have very much education on nutrition. And as a matter of fact, um, the doctor that just graduated actually said that the type of nutrition course that they took, which was basically hardly any at all, maybe, like 4 hours or something like that, was on how to nutrition for a feeding tube. It had nothing to do with nutrition for longevity or anything like that. And so, like I said, they all caught on to this idea uh, of lifestyle, and what you eat has a lot to do with your ability to heal your body. Was all around their patients and what their patients were experiencing. So I really liked that they mentioned that. And it's, I think, a really important thing to know is that the training that doctors get doesn't always have a lot to do with the nutrition. You would think that they would have that training, but in a lot of cases, they do not. So just something to be cognizant of when you're speaking with your doctor. And so let's talk about longevity. So the first thing that they said is that um, really what you want to do is get to the root of the illness and the chronic disease. And plants are a huge component of getting to that root of what your illness and disease is. And so we're going to talk about brain health and the blue zones today. And we'll go into more depth and talk more about what they discussed tomorrow. But when it comes to brain health, there is an epidemic of Alzheimer's disease, and it's continuing to grow. So this is pretty concerning. And the rate actually is that 1 in 3 Americans over the age of 80s will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's and or dementia in their lifetime. And here's an even more concerning fact is that 2 out of 3 of those people that will be diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's are women. So women are at a higher risk of developing, I guess, decline in their brain health. And why is that? Some of it has to do with the fact that we live a bit longer than men do, but there's a genetic and hormonal factors that are coming into play as well. When it comes to our genes, however, they do not have to be your destiny. So even if you have Alzheimer's or dementia in your family, it doesn't mean that you need to also, that you're destined to also have Alzheimer's and or dementia. What it means, though, is that the epigenetics or the lifestyle factors play a huge role in our brain health. So I don't think that just because you have a genetic predisposition, you should make sure that you are watching your health, your lifestyle factors. I think everybody should be, for sure. We all need to be cognizant of the lifestyle factors that come into our brain health. And so what are those? So I've talked about this before, but one of the doctors actually quoted Michael Pollan, who is a journalist. He says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And I really like this. Actually, I think I would, my adaptation would to be to say, eat real food and mostly plants. Something, it's very simple. but not always easy. That's the thing. All right. So, more on the longevity. So, there is scientific evidence to support a plant forward dietary pattern is actually good for our brain. And the doctor quoted the MIND diet, which stands for the Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. And I have not researched anything into that. I haven't looked into it, and maybe we will look into it and talk about that. However, it was described as being a plant forward, plant rich diet. So, rich in antioxidants. And if you are eating a plant forward, plant rich diet, you are able to reduce your risk of dementia by 53%. And the note that the doctor made is we do not have any medications that can do that. So imagine that by just making some changes to our lifestyle and what we're eating, we can reduce our risk of dementia by 53%. And we could not get that from any medicine that we could take. And yes, I agree, Kathy. And so what it also means is we can reduce the cognitive decline by 7.5 years. So that means when you're 80 years old, you can have the brain function of a 72-year-old. So, and then the comment that the doctor made is every little bit helps. So if you can imagine actually having better brain health and having a younger brain, then a plant forward, plant rich diet is the way that you can get that. So that's good news for us. And that includes, if this is part of the epigenetics and the lifestyle. So I still say that everybody should do it, but particularly if you have a predisposition from a genetic perspective, you do have the ability to change your destiny by how you eat. And so the focus is on increasing the consumption of fruits, vegetables, beans, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. And like everything else, it's the same. We've been seeing this as a pattern throughout a lot of the studies and books and things and scientific things that we've been looking at. It's all about fiber. So fiber, getting lots of fiber is good for our brain. And if you don't want to spend the last 10 to 20 years of your life in illness, then having a plant forward dietary pattern is one of the best ways that things we can do for our brain. Any surprises there? I don't think so. I hope not. All right. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the blue zones. So we did a little thing on the blue zones. And so the blue zones are places in the world where people tend to live the longest, healthiest lives. And this is coming from the Blue Zone Kitchen. And so the blue zones are basically areas. So how the name came about is as the researchers were looking at longevity and where people are living the longest, they were using a blue tip pen or marker to note where they're finding the highest incidence of centenarians or people who've lived over 100. And so where they found this blue pattern where it was a lot of blue in an area, that became the blue zone. So that's where we get the name, the blue zones. It's always interesting to see where all these names come from. And so there's 4 commonalities to people who live in the blue zones. And by the way, a lot of the original blue zones actually are seeing a trend to people living uh, shorter lives, and they're not living into their hundreds, into be 100 and above, because a lot of these places have had more westernization. They showed one place, not in here, but I have seen, where there's more fast food and stuff like that available. And so you don't see that definitely the same trends, but it's really good to know. So the four things that are common amongst the blue zones are the sense of belonging. So people feel like they belong. And what that means also is that people aren't put in nursing homes and kind of forgotten when they get older. They still live within their family structure, and live at home and continue to be with people. So there's this sense of belonging. There's also a sense of community within the group and the area. There's a sense of community. I know that Loma Linda in the United States, it was actually probably about 60 miles from where I was at the summit. That community, a lot of people continue to have social activities and really doing things together. The other one is natural movement, and very interesting that a lot of it is, I know in Japan, a lot of people, the people get up and down off the floor a lot. So that's natural movement. They do a lot of walking. In some of the places in the geographies, there's a lot of up and down hill. And so they're used to walking around and going up and down hills and stuff. So they continue to stay active, and it's not about getting into the gym and working out 3 days a week or whatever. It's about actually doing some natural movement. And one of the suggestions that came up from the blue zones was to, maybe once a day or something, actually get down on the floor and put your shoes on and tie them up instead of sitting on a chair. So that's a challenge if anybody wants to try that, is to do that. I did it a little bit. I didn't do it for long, but I thought it feels kind of weird to get down on the floor, but it's good for getting up and down and keeping that movement going. And then the fourth one is eating wisely. And so what does eating wisely mean? Largely plant-based, whole food diet with most of your calories coming from beans, whole grains, greens, tubers, which is root vegetables, and nuts. So that's the key to eating wisely. And so if you look at having a servings of beans every day, that can equate to 4 healthy years added to your lifespan. And if you have a small handful of nuts every day, that can equate to 2 healthy years added to your lifespan. So when you think of that, that's like could add 6 years to your lifespan, roughly. Now, one of the things that was really, I think, a key is that when we look at the ingredients and you think of it from a kind of the Western perspective, most people think, I've heard this so often, when you're eating healthily, we think of deprivation and that it's not going to taste good, and you're losing out on things. Well, the people in the blue zones, the kind of thought would be that they would have to have a lot of willpower to stay on a mostly plant-based lifestyle and eating these ingredients. But it's not true. The secret to what makes it work is that the ingredients are made to taste delicious. And so the real key is if it doesn't taste good, then you're going to be reaching for that fast food. And she said, like the Doritos and stuff like that. So if you don't have good food, then you're going to be reaching for those fast foods. And the one thing she didn't say, oh, and she said the number one ingredient to a longevity diet is taste. And I would agree. It has to taste good. Otherwise, people aren't going to stick to it. But the one thing that I will say is that our tastes can change. And if you're eating a diet rich in Doritos and you're getting all that salt, uh, when you start eating a diet that has less salt, it probably won't taste as good to you because you're used to all that salt. So you do need to give it a bit of time. And it usually takes about 3 weeks or so to make that transition and really, yeah, those foods that when you're so used to eating so much processed foods with sugar and salt and oil, you do have to give it 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks to get your taste buds to adjust for sure. And I've told this story before, but I know when I first started doing juices, I mean, it sounded so good, but man, that first sip was a real wake up call when I took my juice. And I literally put the juice down, thought to myself, do I stop here and just pack it in, or do I drink this juice because it tasted so bad? And at the end of the day, I knew it was good for me. I knew I was doing a good thing. And I was so, already gung ho about doing it. And I thought, okay, I literally plugged my nose and drank the juice. And it took me about 3 weeks to realize that I actually started to enjoy the juice. And even what the program that I've been doing in 2024, I've been going salt free. I think it took me a week of eating the food, and then I started, hey, actually, this is pretty good, and started enjoying it a lot more. But it does take a little getting used to. So keep at it, and it will start to taste better, especially if you are eating less of the processed foods. All right. And so that is I think, our discussion for today. I have more to talk about on longevity. So today we talked about brain health and the blue zones, and it all still is pointing to eat your plants. So eat food, real food, mostly plants. All right. Any questions on what we're covering from our Vegan Women's Summit 2024 longevity panel?
I really appreciate the comment about the Alzheimer's and things like that. That's very hopeful. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. It is. I mean, it's real. I think that one thing that I have seen across all of the research and the reading and things that I've been doing is number one, it doesn't take that long to see a difference. And number two, we can really have a chance to reverse some of the illness and issues and chronic disease that we're seeing. It doesn't work on everyone, but for the most part, we can actually, where you're starting from doesn't mean that that's the best that you can do. You can actually improve. And as a matter of fact, I would say that, give yourself a week or two of changing your lifestyle to a mostly plant forward diet. You will see changes in your energy almost immediately, which is great. So there's lots of benefits to making some changes to our lifestyle. All right. Well, tomorrow we're going to talk more on the same topic because that is only 2 of the panelists have actually had anything to say. We're going to see more on the stress and more on lifestyle and longevity tomorrow. So we'll see you then. Thanks for watching.